DeLuise left to get something to eat. Right down. I see him laughing. That little croissant we gave him.
I thought that was Paul Prudhomme. I always like your southern cooking and all the, what is it, the blackened face fest? What? Cajun, is it? Cajun? Well, on occasion, I'll eat some of it my own self.
Paul Scorvino, great actor. When did you leave Law and Order?
When or why?
Well, both, but when first?
When is
because
about
I know
a year-
people are angry at you about that.
It's a source of difficulty for me in the streets. It really is.
Really?
People literally are angry. People have come up to me and said, I'm so mad at you for leaving that show. I left it about, I guess, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago.
Why?
How many different ways can you say, what did you see after you came out of the coffee shop?
Ah.
I felt like a Mack truck in a parking lot. I was just...
Is that the problem of a cop role, or was that?
No, it's the problem of the structure of the show. First of all, there was very little input accepted, and I'm an actor who is much more than just a portrayer or a pawn in the other fellow's game. I'm a contributor. I'm a writer myself. I'm a producer. I've had my own theater. I'm a best-selling author. I'm not just a fellow you say, okay, stand here, Paul, and talk a little louder. So if I'm not in a circumstance that is all-involving and capacious enough to take my intelligence and to take my ideas and to take my artistic product, then I'm unhappy. Also, we
You
were
have
working-
only a high school education.
That's
and
correct.
Yet you have driven yourself to that kind of intellectual level. What happened there?
Well, that's interesting. I've always been something of a literatura. In high school, for instance, the easy courses for me were things like English, where I'd get 99s, and I'd always ace those tests, or anything involving language, until I came up against geometry. And after a year, the teacher wanted to fail me with a 35. He said, "You're stupid, Scorvino," one Mr. Zuckerman, a lanky, goofy-looking fellow. And
Where's he today?
well, I don't know, but he's walking somewhere up there and saying, I shouldn't have said that to Paul. And then so I studied about 9 hours on the weekend and passed the Regents with an 85. And I didn't know anything about geometry, but I have a good memory, so I remember the theorems and all the different things. The point is, my brother Ronald was the founding psychiatrist of Odyssey House, and my other brother Bill is a real smart guy. And I guess I was supposed to be the performer, the talented one, the cute one, and all the rest of it. And although I always knew I was a writer, and I became head of an advertising agency as a writer, probably to establish my intellectual credentials vis-a-vis my oldest brother, Ronald.
What's the best commercial you ever wrote? Did you write ad copy, print,
I didn't write any commercials because we didn't have any television clients. It was a small agency. I wrote things like, I wrote for a shirt company. They were trying to become a mass market shirt company. It was Holbrook Shirts. And so I put the Hathaway man, the Gant man, and our man, and I said, what do we have to do to prove we make as good a shirt as Hathaway or Gant? Charge as much? And that was the
that's
campaign.
good, yeah.
And I did a lot of things like that. I did, like, for a little car rental thing, I said the Citroen Diane 6, $6.95 a day. Anything less will get you rained on. I was pretty quick with those headlines come into our
Would you get
December
up one
sale.
morning and say, I don't want to be a businessman, I don't want to do this?
Well, I was a performer from the start. I started singing in a nightclub when I was 16, and then I would sell cars, and then I would sell full of brush. And then I
You
would
sang in a nightclub?
Yeah.
And so you sang pop?
Yeah, I sang pop, yeah.
What's the difference between the opera voice and the pop voice?
Well, the pop voice lies right on the chords, and it's a crooning voice. We have an equivalent in the classical production of the voice. It's what gives the high notes, but when you use it in the middle, it's a crooning kind of voice. So
give me an example. What you were doing with Dom was operatic.
Yes.
And
Well, if we did that same song.
So
you mean?
do the same song.
Okay. Yeah, if we did it operatic, which was a I want your banner. Now, if a pop singer would do that, he might do I want your banner, I want your banner, sire. It's all here.
Yeah.
The reason why Sinatra is great, by the way, is because he actually uses chest quality. He's one of the few singers in the world who does it, and that's why he's gone on for so long.
Really?
He's always got some chest in his voice, chest overtones, something that opera singers today don't use.
Really?
It's a lost art. Nobody uses it. Not Pavarotti, not Domingo, not Carreras. They don't use it.
What are you doing now? I know you're working on a film in town.
I'm doing a wonderful film written by and directed by the Bolognas, Joe Bologna and Renee Taylor, starring Leni Kazan, Barbara Carrera, Joe, Renee, and myself, called Oh No, Not Her. It's a takeoff on the Romeo and Juliet story, only instead of the Montagues and the Capulets, it's the Malachichis and the Capamezzas. They're rival caterers in City Island in the Bronx. It's very, very funny.
You have...
I play Italian Count Piero Malachichi, and you see, as I say here again now, it's always interesting to find if you have to express in such a way.
You have such a face. What do people think? Your face is so memorable. How did that affect your career? Did you walk in and get cast because people said, I love that face?
Well, over the years, there's been a love kind of generated, and I feel it, you know.
Yeah.
That's why people are angry at me for leaving Law and Order. But actually, it's been a detriment in a certain sense to the movie career, because in the movie career, if you don't establish a long-running persona, people don't know who you are. I went, for instance, from the deaf lawyer in Dummy, where I had to speak like a deaf person. Lowell Myers, a magnificent lawyer, a true story, and I had to defend LeVar Burton. I went from that to you know, the preacher know God, and who has to watch my ministries. Wow. And so I do so many different things.
That's in the ear, though. You're here. Yeah. You hear sound, right?
I do, yeah. And so I do so many different characters that literally, for the first 15 years of my career, nobody knew who the hell I was, because they'd see me in this and forget that I was in that. Mm-hmm. They'd say, no, I've never seen you. I said, I guarantee you've seen me 10 times. I'd take off the movie set. Well, I saw that. Oh, were you that one? You know, so.
Wow. Did you get more jobs when you got older? Did you have a baby face when you were a kid, and then as you got older?
I could not work in my 20s.
Is that right?
I could not work. I had, I know you were talking about waist size. He said he had, Dom said he was a 34 waist.
Yeah, he got down to 34 once in his life. He forgot to say it was 7 months. But
I was a 33 waist.
33?
Yes. I was 7 years old.
I had you both beat. I was down. I almost went. I did have a 32 in college. But
no, I did in my 20s. I was very athletic, and I had a very small waist and a big chest and a big shock of dark hair like Lil Abner, and a face of a 17-year-old. And you just couldn't use me. I was much too big. I'm 6'2" and a half. You couldn't use me as an ingenue, you know, as a young kid, a juvenile. You couldn't use me as a leading man because I was too baby-faced. I gained 50 pounds. I never stopped working.
That's great. We got to take a break. Paul Scorvino. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back with Paul Scorvino. Before we go any further, I know you're involved in a charity on, is it asthma?
Yes, it's asthma.
Now, before I get into just talking about the asthma thing, you had it?
I had it until I was 25.
All right, it's almost impossible for me because I knew kids when I was a kid that had asthma and they couldn't breathe and they couldn't function very well. I remember kids having to go home in those days. It was really bad because they didn't have those atomizers.
It's worse now.
Really?
It's on the rise.
What
it's
is
the number one visit to emergency rooms.
What is asthma?
Asthma, simply stated, is a 1, 2, or 3 things, or all of those things. You have a trachea, and you have 2 pipes coming down called bronchia. Bronchia, right. And what happens is there is a muscle sheath around these 2 pipes, and that muscle sheath in asthmatics, and no one knows why, does this. When it does this, it stops the airway. It is also a function of swelling from allergy, so that narrows the space, or excessive mucus secretion from allergy, narrows the space. Any one of these things can cause asthma. It goes into spasms.
Now, I have heard, I don't know whether this is true, that stress aggravates it because it causes the muscle to contract?
Stress only aggravates it to the same degree that it aggravates arthritis, heart disease, or any number of other afflictions. The prevailing idea is that asthma is an emotional or mental condition, and that's a lot of bunk. The reality is it runs in families. It's a genetic predisposition. I had it, my father had it, my brother had it, my nephew had it, 2 nephews have it, and my son had it. So this has nothing to do, if that were the case, then when I walk into a stable, I wouldn't start to feel funny in my chest. I'm allergic, like my son. My son swells up like this. But he doesn't have asthma because of the breathing exercises, and I don't have asthma.
If anybody wants to get involved or do something about it, we have an address on the screen.
Yes.
Tell them about it.
We just started the Scorvino Asthma Foundation, and big corporations like Payne Weber and Panasonic are getting involved. We're having a big sale around New York the 21st of September. All the proceeds are going to go to building a children's asthma hospital in Lake Mahopac, New York. And there's a video coming out which I made and produced donated by SMA Video, wonderful people, Mike Morrissey, which actually teaches the exercises that cure asthma.
How did you get rid of it at age 25?
I was told about it by Herb Edelman and Robert Burr, whom I was understudying in the show Bajur. I had serious asthma. I was on cortisone. I was on bronchodilators, Tedrol, as a matter of fact. And what happened was I was leaving the show, and these two guys said, "No, you don't have to. We can cure that. You can cure that." I said, "You're crazy." And to think of it makes me think. And they said, "No, just do these exercises." So they sat with me for about an hour and a half, and I did these exercises. And that day I took only 2 Tadrol. I took no more cortisone. I got up the next morning and I had no more spasm. Since then, I've taught 1,000 people myself over the years, and saved a woman's life outside a restaurant with this and all the rest of it. And my book, which was called How to Become a Former Asthmatic, which was a bestseller in hardback and sold many, many more in paper, it was probably responsible for curing 30 or 40,000 people. This is not a research project. This is something that stops asthma cold in about 20 minutes. So those of you who want the video, I implore you, just write to the address that you're going to see, and we'll send you a form, and you can order the video, and it's going to be $39.95, and the proceeds after expenses will go to building the Children's Asthma Hospital, where we'll take all comers regardless of ability to pay.
Okay, a lot of people on talk shows don't like to plug things, but I had Don talk about his children's book because I happen to think he's very talented and does that well. This is a very worthwhile cause. I think that's good.
I don't
you
have
never
that.
liked that.
No, I don't like Dom.
No,
yeah,
well, he's sort of a pain in the neck. Now that you mention it. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think he's talented.
Why did we have him on?
Yeah, I have no idea. In fact, I don't like this show good.
You could do a talk show. A lot of guys could not do a talk show, but you have that background. Now, did you have pain in your childhood that caused you to be funny? Because you got a sense of humor. You just nailed Dom.
My dear fellow, sure. My mother and I left my father and brothers when I was 10. There was so much contention in the house, and my mother just had to leave, and we were on the lam for a year and a half, my mother and I. So, oh yes, I felt like a ping pong ball, and my father kidnapped me back from California. My child was an extraordinarily difficult childhood, filled with fear and guilt about leaving with my mother, and then guilt about, and then the terrible feeling of not being with my mother my entire teen years was a terrible thing. And of course, then they reunited at my urging later on, and I took care of her till she died, and all the rest of it.
They did reunite.
Yeah, but then they put apart again. Then they would go to each other's house. It was a really interesting thing. My father's 92 years old and still going. But yes, I had a lot of pain and a lot of fear and a lot of shame in my childhood, like so many other children. Raised in an old...
How did you get out of it? Most people today would go on Sally Jesse Raphael, tell this story, and then commit a crime. I mean, you had a tough life, but you overcame it. What can you tell people to help them say, hey, look, I had a bad time too, but I'd like to get better, and I'd like to be worthwhile?
Earlier on, I went to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist for some therapy to make sure that I was... There were 2 reasons. First of all, what propelled me into that was the cortisone that I took at age 25 for 2 or 3 months, which, as you know, it alters your personality.
Yeah, I had it in a couple times, and it does.
So when you take it over a period of time, in addition to disfiguring the body and stunting the growth of children when they have to take it, it alters your personality. It made me paranoid. So I was propelled to a psychologist because I felt people were out to get me, and I said, never felt that way before. I'm such a gregarious, fun-loving individual, pain notwithstanding. I always knew how to have a good time. I had a wonderful way about the life. That propelled me into that, to a search inside myself, and so I went to a psychologist for some years. It was very helpful, and in other words, almost as you bring in the car, because the carburetor's not working, you find out the exhaust system needs work. So I went in for one thing and then found out there were other things, ways of relating that weren't direct, ways of displaying what I was that were hidden. You know, I wasn't doing that. I was keeping my light under a bushel.
A lot of people say psychology is crazy, psychiatry is crazy, all that stuff. But what you're saying is, hey, any help helps.
Any help, what is it? I mean, it's just you're talking to someone, as they used to say, Freud is the person that cures people by talking to them. You're really talking to a person. If you had a really good friend who was wise, a sagacious individual with a heart, and you spoke to him and he had a feeling about how things were with you, it would have, in my mind, the same effect. It's just difficult to find an objective person. I think love has a lot to do with it, though, and I think if you really have a person who loves you and you love them and trust them, that's going to go a long way. But there's no reason. If you have a cut on your finger, if your car needs work, if anything in the house doesn't work, you get somebody to fix it. What this does, that kind of help, is it improves your function as a human being. It lets you maximize your potential, and it gives you a better feeling about yourself. And we all need that. I don't know anybody who's straight down the road. If you say, show me someone without distortions, I've never seen one.
I agree. We'll be back with Paul Scorvino. Most beloved actors, Paul Scorvino. In Law and Order, Michael Moriarty was a guest of mine a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. And I know Michael quite well, and he left the show under less than perfect circumstances, and he felt screwed, frankly. He felt when Janet Reno called them all down there to talk about TV violence that she overdid it, and then the producers leaned on him, and he came out of that somewhat angry. What's your opinion of that?
Well, Michael is an inspired actor, one of our best. And he acts from his heart, and he speaks from his heart. I thought this was the United States of America, where free speech was a given. I think Ms. Reno far overreached her bounds. She has no right to threaten that we'll close you down, I think were the words. I don't understand that. I think that kind of bureaucratic arrogance is unconscionable and unacceptable in the United States of America, or anywhere on this planet. And I'm sorry that Mike felt that way, but that show itself had a certain stultifying feeling to it. Everything was programmed. You had to do it exactly as it was. There was no input. Michael had a more input because in his role he was able to kill the bull. You know, he's the lawyer. But Michael is a very special actor. His stance, to my mind, is absolutely right.
Will this hurt his career?
Can't hurt his career. He's too good. And why would it hurt his career? Does anybody think that...
Well, producers feel that, you know, now that he's taken on the government, that they might get some people looking at their show.
He probably will not work again for that producer until that producer needs him.
That's always the case.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's a matter of dollars and cents. The role is right. That producer will come right back, you know.
Yeah.
Wolf was doing his political thing, you know.
Yeah. You're a very smart guy. You've been in advertising. You know, you're very literate. You're musical. You've got a good look at things. We've got about a minute or so left. I'd just like to get your general feeling about what you think's going on in America. Are we headed up or headed down? Are we...
I got a chill when you said that, because I guess my gut feeling is we are in very perilous times. And I think although Mr. Clinton is trying his best, he is not the man for the job. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a matter of stature and it's a matter of character. And I think we are in a very serious, way. I think we have to find an identity as a nation, which we perhaps thought we had and maybe really didn't have. Maybe with all of this examination into our national character or persona or inner personality, I would like to say, maybe this is good and maybe it will come out on top. But I think we need more giants at the helm.
Can giants survive today in the world of press? I talked to Dom about what the press does to you today.
Well, look what they're doing to Cuomo, whom I think is a giant and one of the smartest men on the planet Earth and one of the best men on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. He has been completely misperceived. His stance on the death penalty has never changed 1 millimeter. Mm-hmm. He's been completely misperceived. There's so much going on that is, when you talk about the press, as Dom so rightly said, is interested in the story. There seems to be no morality whatsoever. And I have a problem with human beings interacting with one another where there is no moral component. There's no moral directive guiding them. There should be. You should not be able to look up a person's anus with a camera. There should be a law against that. And literally, or let's say figuratively, that's what the press is doing. They are doing things that you would not do to another human being.
They don't do it in Europe to some of their people.
Oh, well, their libel laws are very severe. We seem to, the press says, now we have a right to, everyone, the public's right to know. The public doesn't have to have a right to know whether I have a mole on my behind or not. That's none of their goddamn business.
I've always suggested that we have the same right to look at the press and what they're doing, but they don't seem to want to do it.
Forget it, pal. You can wait a long time for that one, you know?
Paul, it's been a delight. I'd like to have you back sometime.
I would love to come back. I've enjoyed this very much.
Great.
Don't get Dom DeLuise again.
No,
I don't like that man.
He's finished.
He's a great
it's finished.
guy.
It ain't finished. He's a great guy.
Finished. He's out of here.
He's out of here.
Yeah.
ben assai, dici cancella voia, che non mi scorda mai.
This is two tenors.
That's great. All right, we're out.
Hey, why
Thank
doesn't
you.
Pavarotti